welcome to another episode of The Family Business, where I am pleased to welcome Lauren Bishop. Lauren and I have known each other for a long time. Thanks so much for being on. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, you bet. I think people are going to find you rather engaging. I have for the last 15 years, so I don't see why they would think any different. So just to get people acquainted, give me a minute of a snapshot of your situation today, where you work, what you do, so people have some context, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff.
Yeah. Today, I am Lauren Bishop, the CEO of Dossier Medical, and we are known for our sustainable, biodegradable materials and orthopedic devices.
It's an interesting website. I went through it closely today, and I have a few questions about the ecological piece of this. So it's reusable. I've had plenty of casts and splints and braces in my life. They don't smell so great towards the end of your time. Like, how do you handle the odor of it?
Yeah, so I would say it's only reusable for the same patient. So just it's mainly that it's
That's pretty funny.
reheatable. So as swelling goes down, you can shape it and reshape it based on just the edema of the patient. So
Uh-huh.
over the treatment phase. Um, In terms of kind of, we call it the funk factor, our materials, you can wash them.
Okay.
And so most casting and for fracture care nowadays is more of a splint. And so, which means the patient can take it on and off as needed. And so with that, you can wash the materials to keep the smell at bay.
So is it wood or a form of wood?
Form of wood, so there's aspen wood chips in it. And so we're a Finnish-based company, and aspen trees are, I think it's 150,000 acres of aspen forest in Finland. And so they grow very quickly. And so it's aspen wood chips and a polymer that make up the structural material.
So the coolest part, at least to me, I find the odd stuff more interesting than the traditional stuff, is that it's for dogs too. And I see we've got a guest in the back. Who is that?
Me too. This is Molly.
Oh,
She
Molly.
is almost 10 years old, and she's truly our first child, but and she's got a lot of sass, so she won't look at the camera. But she's a husky and American bulldog mix, but very chill, very cool. So
Has
she's
she
everybody.
ever?
Hey.
Hey, way to go, Molly! Right on cue.
Right.
So, did Molly ever have to wear one of your casts?
She has not. No, she hasn't, and she probably, yeah, she hasn't had any bad injuries, which is nice.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a dog now. He's 4, and I'm a bit of a overprotective parent. When he runs around, I'm always worried he's going to get hurt. But it's just nice to know that there are braces and casts and things for them that if they get hurt, there's a place to go. Is that a large portion of your business, or not as much?
Right now, because we're still pretty early stage, and it's about half of our business. And
Really?
it's a business that we had acquired, and then we've synergized with our technologies. And the vet side does have studies showing reduction in complication by using our materials. It's just more gentle on their thinner skin. So a lot of times when dogs are casted, there's a lot of lacerations and just kind of infection issues. And so our materials tend to help with that. And then another cool project that they're working on is this study Paladin project for ACL repair. So it can be either used post-surgical to really help make sure that, everything stays intact, or it can be used as a non-surgical option too. So they're still kind of finalizing the studies now, but it's going really well. And it's a more prevalent issue with animals than we realize. So that's another cool study that they're working on.
So I want to give a little history of how you and I know each other. And so we started talking 15 years ago, and it coincides with soccer.
Right.
I became my daughter's coach when she's 19 now, so she was 5 at the time, and I was just starting. And I had never coached soccer. I played a bit growing up, but I didn't play at a high school level. And so I was always looking for advice. And Lauren's email address used to be Kickin6. And then I noticed that she had played at Jacksonville University. And so when we had to talk about an opportunity, she was so quick to be helpful with all kinds of ways to work with the kids and make sure they have a good time while they learn the game. And so I don't know if you remember that, but that's how this whole thing started.
I do. I know we've almost known each other so long. You try to remember how we met. But yeah, that is. And I remember you always calling me kicking six, but I'm such a proponent of sports for girls. And, as women head into their career, I think there's so many great lessons and just principles that come from that and building confidence and leadership. So anytime I hear someone's daughter is getting into it, I get super excited.
Yeah, I love the life lessons behind it. I've been coaching for 30 years and I've always been the one pushing that, yeah, the wins are great. We all want to have success on the field or on the court, but it's the development, the confidence, they're making friends, the social side of it, taking instruction, understanding that
Mhm.
sometimes the referee is going to make a bad call and you have to bounce back from all these things.
Yeah.
There's so much there. And so you started playing how early in your life?
I was 5, so kindergarten, and, which, it was a while ago. But it's interesting because I could never get enough. I loved it, and you would have friends along the way that would burn out here and there, and I just could not get enough. I loved it so much, and I miss it today. I mentioned, Matt, that I have a standing desk, but it's part of my old lady soccer problems where sitting tends to kind of lock
Yeah.
up my back, and so standing is better for me. But I don't play anymore. But yeah, I mean, most of my life I've played and started really early on. And my daughter has started and starting to actually pay attention and care about it. She'll be 5 in a couple days. So it's kind of cool to see the legacy potentially continuing.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing. I wanted to talk about this with you, so I'm glad you brought it up. It's challenging for both of you, for you to be somewhat patient and let her organically fall in love with the game and become more interested in it and then becoming more talented. And for her, I don't know if she can grasp how good you are. She probably has no idea at this age. But I mean, her mom was a player. I mean, you're two-time
Right.
captain at Jacksonville University. I mean, you weren't just somebody who sat on a bench. And so I'm curious how those conversations go when you work with her. How do you rein yourself in from being overly competitive? And does she respond and listen and take instruction?
Right. Yeah. And there's two parts to that too, is I don't ever want her to feel like she has to play soccer because I did. My husband and I would love for her to play sports in general. And if soccer's her thing, then that's great. But I'm gonna have to be very aware to not overly push it. Um, but she knows that I used to play, and sometimes she'll see pictures, whether it's a college picture of me playing or even little kid pictures where I try to see if we look alike because she looks more like my husband. So I'm always trying to find ways of when she looks like me. Um, but we will practice a little bit. And I think for her right now, it's just fun. I don't think she really knows that I know what I'm talking about more than most parents. So
Yep.
maybe we'll get there. But it's also a challenge I have in coaching because right now it's like a goal just to keep them on the field at the same time. So there's not a lot of true strategy yet. And that's where I really struggle, where I don't know that I'm ready to coach yet because that's way too much patience for me. I'm going to get too hardcore. And so I just don't think we're ready for
Yeah.
that yet.
Well, it's tough. I mean, I remember when I first started, I used to try to point out people as opposed to the rules and say, look, I
Yeah.
want you to run towards that guy in the red coat, run towards your mom. And I told the mom, don't move because the moms, they move, they're on their phones or whatever. And I found that worked in football and soccer in particular, as opposed to trying to give them like intricate plays at that age. They would space out, but they knew how to run to the guy with the red coat. That they could do. And so it
Yeah.
worked out pretty well. Listen, I think, to me, and I'm obviously biased, but I think coaching is the best way to give back to your sport and to the kids in your community because it is so hands-on. It's, other things that you do within the community, they're more administrative and you plan an event, but this is an entire season where these kids know you for years and they'll see you
Yeah.
at the grocery store when they're 14 and say, "Hey coach," and it is awesome. And with your
It's so
knowledge and your
true.
personality, I would push you hard to go make sure you do it. You're going to be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I definitely will, and I think, I travel every week, and so it's
Yeah.
usually, just one night a week or so, so as long as I had an assistant,
Yep.
but it would have to be someone that can kinda calm me down and not get
I
so
know.
intense with these five-year-olds, but yeah, I definitely will at some point, and I have before too, even, like, prior to having kids, so it does force you to think through why we do things because kids ask why and you're like, I don't know, just this is how we pass with and so it allows you to think through or forces you to think through those things and it is good for you, a good test of patience as well.
Yep.
But also to your point, I have had some incredible coaches in my through my era of soccer growing up and I still remember them. I still have dreams about not being ready in time for practice and I didn't have my shin guards or the right color uniform. So
Yep.
it's definitely ingrained in who I am and it always will be. So it is a big part of people's lives.
We have a common thread here at our company. The people who succeed in here all enjoy practice, whether
Mm.
it's guitar, dance, math, chess, or sports, or weightlifting, or whatever it is that you do, but it's something that you do daily, that there's no winning or losing with what you're doing. It's just work. And those are the people that succeed in our business. And so the people that I know that have played high level of high school, college sports, and even professionally, they enjoy the practice. They like lacing them up. And so I'm curious, is that something for you? Is that consistent?
Yeah, definitely. And while I don't play soccer today, I still, like working out and exercising is still a huge part of my life because you've learned over time how it makes you feel and it's great for mental clarity. It's not just physical health but mental health too, and so it will always be a piece of me where if I haven't worked out for 4 days, I can feel the
Yeah.
difference and just I'm not happy. So that part of it too is forever ingrained in me and is always going to be a priority. But then in terms of just learning that you have to put in the work to get better in anything, that's a big piece of it too. So that continues to always be, something that pushes and drives me too.
Yeah. Whenever I get, my wife calls it falumpy. It's just another term for being kind of fussy and not in a good mood. She always asks two questions. Have you eaten anything? When's the last time you worked out? Because if
Right.
I said I just ate and I worked out this morning, she'll say, okay, something's really bothering you. But if the
Mhm.
answer is I haven't eaten in 6 hours or I didn't work out this week, she'll just say, look, either go get a sandwich or go run, but go do something because I'm not listening to this anymore. And
Right.
that's usually my buttons. So
Yes.
the one thing we haven't talked about much in our friendship here is I don't know anything about Mason. So
Okay.
I don't want to probe into his personal life, but I'm curious how y'all met, and because you're a hardworking, fairly intimidating kind of person, as far as for people to come up to you and say hello. And so I'm curious how you met, and I'd love to hear if there's any backstory there.
Yeah, there is. And it's kind of funny. Mason is one of the funniest people I know. And my whole life I've been drawn to people that have a good sense of humor because life can get hard or be hard or mundane. And so I'm always drawn to the funny, fun people because I just think it's more important to have fun. But we met on Instagram and he will tell you that I stalked him. Um, and this was way back with on Instagram where you didn't even really message people. It was just kind of you could comment on a picture. And we were following a similar fitness page and he had written something funny. And I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. And so I liked a few of his pictures. And then it kind of went back and forth. And then we had a conversation in public comments, where people could see. So then you're not thinking anything of this, right? It's like a Sunday, single in Chicago, having a great life, and just was on Instagram and one morning. And so it turned into exchanging phone numbers and then talking. And then I was like, this guy is interesting and, piquing my interest. And so it just went from talking to eventually meeting because I travel every week for work. And he was in Rochester, New York, and I lived in Chicago at the time. And so when I was going to be in the area, and so we decided to meet. And you're like, this is either going to be really awkward or really cool. And so here's the test. And we met, and it was great, and it was easy and comfortable. And it just kind of kept clicking. And one thing I think that was great about this is it allowed us to have a friendship first and really just be kind of involved and committed to this. And so it's kind of an interesting way how having the long distance to start, and then eventually he moved to Chicago. But so that's how we met. I stalked him on Instagram.
Wow. My wife will never admit it, but she stalked me too. And she always is like, it's not true. She tells my kids, I'm like, will you stop? It absolutely, and wow, that's fantastic. I had no idea how could I know you for all this long and I didn't know that story?
Yeah, it's so random. And what's really cool too is my parents are high school sweethearts,
Mhm.
and his parents have been married since right after high school too. And I always in relationships, I just am highly critical and I take that
Yeah.
very seriously. So the fact that this was a relationship that I didn't overthink, it just made sense. And so that for me is, where it clicked. That was the big difference maker. So it was just cool to see, and for my friends and family to see, like, okay, random guy from Instagram is sticking around. Good for him.
Listen, those social media sites, it's like when they say about Vegas, they're not in business for no reason. They're in business because they
Yeah,
connect people. That's what they do.
right,
And mathematically, there has to be a couple of marriages that come from it. There's millions of people communicating. It
right.
can't be that uncommon, but that's awesome. I mean, what were you doing in Rochester?
I just had some business meetings there. I don't know if we were. I really am trying to
It's just
remember.
an odd place to have business when you're living in Chicago.
It is. I mean, it was with some spine surgeons. It could have just been like a lunch or a dinner meeting with one of our distributors. But that's the funny part is I don't even know exactly what meeting I was there for.
Yeah, look, in my world where I grew up, they call it beshert. It's another word for karma. It's just
Right.
it's supposed to happen.
Right.
And look at the results. So let's talk about Quinn a bit. So
Yeah.
Quinn is Lauren's sensational daughter.
Hmm.
And I remember talking about this with you because, like me, you had kids, not at 22. And so
Right.
you were moving up in your career, you were having significant success. And there was a lot to think about for you. And then you wound up doing this, and she's magical. So I'm sure, but I'm curious how roll back 5, 6 years ago when you were making this decision and how what might affect your career. I'm curious how you came to the conclusion, okay, I'm good with this now. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, really, initially, we weren't planning to have kids. Neither one of us, for some reason, were overly drawn to it. Because you meet the people that have always want to have a family and want to have 3 to 5 kids, and so I guess I'm less traditional in that way. But after gosh, it was, yeah, probably 3 to 4 years of marriage. We were like, maybe we're missing out on something, right? There's something to be said for how much people love and talk about their kids and how it really leads a lot of their life. And so we we just kind of shifted that way a little bit, and then I got pregnant fairly easily. And so once I got pregnant, I really kind of freaked out and panicked, because then you really start to think about how this is going to impact
Yep.
your day to day, your career. And so I wasn't overly excited in the beginning, and was just a little bit in panic and just needed to figure it out. I had also just started a new job. I had been with Orthofix for 8.5 years and was trying to grow my career and expand. And so it was a lot of changes all at once. And but once it all settled in, you eventually start getting excited, and then it's just a wild journey to see how it goes. So, a little bit of, because it happened so easily, you feel like it was meant to be,
Mhm.
but it took a little bit for me to get comfortable with it. I'm definitely non-traditional in that way.
Listen, it's not supposed to go smoothly. There's
Right.
so many variables involved here, and none of it is predictable. Zero of it.
Right.
So once you gave birth and you realize, that okay, my wife says it as it's like the Wizard of Oz when you open the door and everything's in color. Like it just kind of
Hmm.
changes. Did it shift for you right away, or did it take some time for you getting to know her, becoming a
Yeah.
mom? Did it take time?
Yeah. It did not shift for me right away. The first 3 months, I think you're kind of just in a little bit of panic mode, like, what did we do? And
Yeah.
how do we take
What
care
did
of
we
this?
do?
And, it's a
Can we
whirlwind.
give it
I'm
back?
so fascinated by how little sleep we can function
Yeah.
on. That was my biggest aha moment. But no, it really, it's a lot in the beginning, and then you get your groove. We were big schedule people, like keeping her on a schedule. And she was such an easy baby. We're so spoiled and lucky. Um, so we didn't have it rough compared to some parents, I think. But yeah, we kind of got in our groove, and then it really did get better and better. The more they can interact with you, and you see their little personalities come through. And um, when she was really little and I was back to work, she didn't really notice as much that I was gone. It almost got a little bit harder as she got a little older. And then once she started to realize I was traveling for work, there was a little phase where it was pretty tough. But for the most part, she's handled that really well too, because it's just normal for her. So she knows mom will be back in a day or two. And my husband holds down the fort amazingly. So it's been good. It's been good overall.
I have my daughter's 19, and I had a sister growing up, so it's not like I didn't have experience with girls, but I didn't know what to do. My wife was like you. She traveled a ton when Olivia was young, and I didn't know how to make a ponytail. I didn't understand majority of the things that would go into getting a girl ready for school or for her dance recital or for whatever. Thankfully, the moms usually took pity on me. They're like, "Oh, you poor man, just give her to me, and I'll straighten it out." But I will say this: it was great for me. It made me so much more well-rounded, patient, understanding. I became a better listener. I became so much more of a person because my wife wasn't there, and I had to do it. So I
Yeah.
think Mason's probably already a great guy, but I am betting that this will enhance him as a human being, because boys to boys, it's easy. I know exactly what my son's gonna say. He's just a better looking version of me. It's so easy. But with my daughter, I have to really pay attention and think and be on top of it. And I genuinely think that that's the case. Having daughters makes you a better man.
That's amazing to hear. I love seeing dads with their daughters. It's such a cute bond, because it's just kind of more of a gentle, versus wrestling probably around with your son. But
Still
yeah,
happens.
it is great to see. Mason is such a natural in front of kids. I've always been amazed by that. Even before we had kids and trick or treaters would come and he's talking to them and being funny. And I was always really shy around kids.
Yeah.
So he is an amazing dad, and they're so cute together. So it is cool to see. And we really have such a, like, just all in. There's no traditional roles. It's just everyone pitches in 50-50. So we have such a good dynamic there. And so yeah, it's been great.
So much of it's communication. You know, we have a 3-day rule at my house. Do you know what
Okay.
gunny sacking is? You ever heard that term?
No.
And my wife taught it to me. She teaches me most things, quite honestly. But gunny sacking is when you're frustrated about something. Say it's that the laundry piled up and you didn't do it, and you rarely do it. It's just like several times. But you don't want to say anything because they're doing everything else really well. So you're gunny sacking it. You're keeping it inside, and you're like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say. Then I'm like, I don't know. Say weeks later, they drop a knife on the floor that has peanut butter on it, and it gets on the floor, and all of a sudden you snap over the
Yeah.
peanut butter,
Yeah.
which is so silly because Molly will eat it anyhow, so who cares? It's,
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's such a
Yes.
nothing thing to get mad about. But you've been gunny sacking the laundry for weeks, and this is what made you snap. And so we have a
Right.
rule. We call it a 3-day rule. There's no gunny sacking. After 3 days, you have to spill, even if it's stupid. So I
Yeah.
always felt communication is the key to having this kind of relationship. Do you all just lay everything on the table?
Yeah, we're both good communicators, and I think we're also both good at apologizing when needed. There's definitely a good amount of people out there that just aren't good apologizers. And so we are, which I think helps too, but we're good communicators, and we can be just candid. And sometimes it's not going to be received well, but you still have to go to war and just get it out there, and then we'll joke about it later, and then it becomes a funny joke where we just make fun of each other about it.
That's
So
that's interesting that you said that, because I think being a good apologizer is so much more important than people realize. They see it as a sign of weakness, and I don't. So I'm curious if you agree with me. I cringe when people say, "I'm sorry if you're offended." I'm like,
Yeah, that's not an apology.
I always say, I go, "Where's the apology in that?"
Yeah.
And so I've been diligent in the way that I word it. I'm sorry that I did this. I take full responsibility. This was my fault.
Right.
And
Yeah, there's a difference.
yeah, no, here's the question I have for you though.
Mhm.
How long does it take for you to get there when you're a bit heated? Like say you're at an 8 or a 9 and you're frustrated with the situation, with him, with whatever's going on. Can you apologize right away or do you need hours or a day to come back around and say, "All right, yeah, I was off, my fault."
Yeah. No, it may take where we have to kind of just go in a separate room for a minute, but probably 30 minutes or so. It's not, yeah, we're not day or month later.
Yeah, can you talk to
And
my
I have
wife
to,
because she's a day later. She won't
she,
do it right
okay,
away. The worst. I
right.
apologize right away within 15, 20
Yeah.
minutes, no matter how mad I was, if I was wrong, especially. If she's
Yeah.
wrong, she she
Yeah.
digs in her heels, and
I
it
just hate that feeling of
yeah,
being at
yeah.
odds with somebody.
I'm the
Like it
same.
weighs on me so
Are
heavily,
you a
and
middle
not just
child?
with Mason, but all relationships.
Are you a middle
Am I
child?
what?
Are you a middle child?
I am, no, I am the youngest, and I have one older sister, so I'm the youngest.
Yeah. Well, there's only 2 of you. It's just you only 2 kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm the middle of 3. So I've been a
Okay.
peacemaker my whole life, and that's just the way that I
Yeah.
like it. I can't stand when people are yelling at each other. All right, well oh, I didn't realize, so you have an older sister. Now, let's talk a bit about role models and things like that because just so you all know, we're having this nice family conversation, but Lauren is a stud. I mean, super successful, brilliant, dogged. Like, she does not stop. And yet we're having this conversation about how sweet she is. So I'm glad you get to see this other side of her for the people who work with her and
Right.
don't realize what a great human being she is. But I am curious where the tenacity comes from. Is it your sister? Is it your mom? Was it a coach you mentioned? Like, where did all this come from? Because you have such drive.
Yeah, I definitely do. I guess starting out, both of my parents are pretty incredible. My dad is an architect, but
Mm.
was entrepreneurial because he started his own firm, probably halfway through my childhood. And he works so, so, so hard. And and so then my mom she has her master's in psychology and she's always been in education. So she's been a guidance counselor most of her career. And so I kind of have, yeah, like the hardcore business drive, but then the ability to read people, get along with personalities, the ability to apologize from my mom, because she has just that charismatic way with people. She's very warm and all of my friends love my parents. And
Yeah.
so they're just a really nice blend. So I think I got to steal from that.
Yeah, because your career has been interesting in that for someone who's so successful from a sales standpoint, you started in marketing. And so I'm curious about that because people ask me that question a lot. How do I get to where I want to go and be the most successful at it? Is it better to have a linear path and be a salesperson, just go straight up? Or in your case, you were a product manager for a few years first. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how that helped you become so successful on the sales side.
Definitely a proponent of cross-functional experience. And so, I had just known going into college I wanted to be in business. And so I had taken some business classes, and just marketing and sales just seemed innate for me. It just made sense. Um, but starting in marketing, I was kind of the crazy person that was interviewing for jobs before I even finished my first semester senior year of college. But I I didn't even know what med device was, and so when I interviewed for it was Biomet at the time. They're based out of Jacksonville, the cranial maxillofacial division. Um, I just started into marketing and just kind of learning about the industry. And sometimes, and probably even still today, people don't always know what marketing does, and I think it can mean different things for different companies and based on the size. But in that role, I still interacted a lot with the sales force. And I would always have, the sales reps being like, oh, college athlete, you're so competitive, you've got to get into sales. And I really enjoyed what I was doing. And I was at my first company for 4.5 years and just wanted something more. I felt like I was kind of always going to be viewed as that just out of college kid. And so I was looking for something more. And when I switched to orthofix and to spine, I did marketing for one more year and then really got recruited hard to get into sales. And as I got into sales, I realized it was nice to have that background information of who to go to for what inside a company. And I would have the patience for why the brochure doesn't have certain claims or why it's taking longer than you think. And it's more important to get it right because I know how the engineers think. So I think it really was good to have that marketing background and understand how a company works internally so that I could navigate it and even guide sales reps moving forward as to why things tend to happen the way they do.
I mean, look at the success that you've had without blowing smoke at you. I mean, you're now the CEO of Dossier in the medical side of things, which it's been a rapid ascension for you, but all well deserved. So I'm curious when that title comes your way, it's kind of heady stuff. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how much experience you have. That's still like, wow, that's kind of the pinnacle. The CEO is the top spot. So
Right.
when that happened to you, was it I belong here. I'm supposed to be here. I'm ready for this. Or I'm like, okay, I didn't expect this. This is sooner than I thought it was coming. I don't know if I'm ready for this. What were your thoughts when that came to you?
Yeah, it definitely was. It takes a minute to sink in. And I don't know if anyone ever really feels like they're ready, or at least I did not. It came pretty quickly for me. And so, yeah, there was definitely a piece of, can I do this? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I know what a CEO is supposed to do? There's definitely those moments, and it's a lot of learning and growing. But that's the part that I love is just being pushed and having to learn and grow. So I started this role in January, and I look back from now to January how much I have taken on and just truly grown within this role. And it is not perfect and there are highs and lows, but it's this is the kind of stuff that's more fulfilling to me is just getting better, getting stronger, finding problems, knowing I made a mistake and fixing it. It makes time fly for sure. But yeah, to answer your question again, I did not know that I was ready, but you kind of just have to take it and make it work.
And clearly you have. Now, it's the experience I have with CEOs is, several years of this. Plus, I've watched the CEO here, Joe, do massive, magical things, but it's lonely. I've always thought
Yes.
that was because I've led all kinds of organizations outside of work and some at work over my career. And I've always felt that, as much as I love leadership, it's a lonely spot. And I think that's a common theme with most of the leaders that I know. So I'm curious for you, when it's just you, like who do you turn to when you say, all right, I've never done this before, or I'm not sure if this is the right way to go? What do you do at that point?
Yeah, and it is lonely, and I am such a team-oriented person, so, sometimes I struggle with that, but I have such a good, um, just core group of people that I lean on, and whether it's making a decision, a new career decision, or, there's definitely been some strategies at this company that I've struggled with, and so I think we all have our Rolodex of people that we reach out to based on certain categories. Um, so I definitely have a good amount of those people from the industry, and you are one of them.
Is
And
that
so I
right?
know you've coached me along
Awesome.
this some of the wild rides, even the past year. Um, but also, I have joined. I have an executive coach, which I think
Mhm.
is important, and it's not just personal development, or professional development, but we also dive into some of the specifics of the company, and he helps me bounce ideas off of one another and just it gives me the confidence that some of what I'm thinking is on point and that and just gives me some ideas on how to get there, and a lot of that is scaling, and we're at this revenue today, we need to exponentially grow, and how do we get there? And then I've also joined a CEO alliance group where there's typically about 8 CEOs on the call once a month, and we all just bring one problem to the group, and then we all talk through it. And I think we're always saying, like, man, it's so good to hear that you're having the same problem
Yep.
I am. I'm sorry that you are, but it makes you feel like you're not alone and that your company isn't the only one with struggles. And so, having those peer groups too has been really helpful for me.
It's been quite a run, and here's the best part is you're still really early in your career. I mean, you've got a lot left if you want it to
Right.
have such an enormous impact in healthcare, whichever route you seem to go, although you're really maximizing your current situation, so that's fantastic. And and I am curious to watch. I hope we stay in touch for the rest of the
Of
duration
course.
of this because
Yeah.
I am enjoying this movie that is your
Yeah.
life, and it's been great to watch you because there's no such thing as balance, but great to see you get some of the other side of the equation of what's awesome about life, and you seem so much the better for it.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, kind of to your point where you get to a higher phase of your career, there is always that question of what's next. And so I don't know that I have that answer today, but eventually you just kind of do the typical due diligence and figure it out and find the right fit. Um, and a couple things I had wanted to mention because we were talking about this family work life balance. And one of my friends from the industry had mentioned this a while ago, but she said, everyone externally outside the household gets the best of you, and your family gets the rest of you. And that really stuck with me because we do in business and with our friends, we put our best foot forward and they get our high energy. And then we get home and then we're like, oh, and then we're venting and
Yep.
complaining and tired. And so I've really tried since having Quinn, just make sure I still bring positive, happy energy and make sure I'm giving Mason and Quentin the best of me too. So that was just a really good point that has always stuck with me.
It's a great sentence, and it applies for the rest of your marriage. Because even when your kids go off to college, like mine does, I still, when she calls, I've got to do the best of me. Even when I've got 13 things going on at work and I don't feel great, maybe physically something's happening. But when Olivia calls, my mom says that it's showtime. You know, hey,
Yeah.
what's up? Great to hear from you. So glad you called. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I'm drowning here. Yeah, now that's
Yeah.
terrific that you picked that up early. Well, look, it has
Yeah.
been every bit as interesting as I thought it would be. For those of you that don't know her, look her up. Lauren Bishop, who runs Dossier for their medical division, she has done phenomenal work. And on top of being an exceptional human being, this has been the family business where we discuss how careers and families are intertwined. And Lauren, thanks so much for being on. You were terrific.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Matt. I always love staying in touch with you and seeing how the Mullings group has really evolved and shifted. And you guys are definitely a leader. So I follow all of you on your social media and LinkedIn and really appreciate and get a lot from your content too. And you didn't tell me to say this. I really genuinely believe this.
Well,
And
thank you.
so it's impressive what your group has done too.
Yeah, I think the surprising part about it is that we enjoy it. And I think that that's what comes through. You know, we have very different voices, all of us, but we all thoroughly get something out of it. It's not just giving, what we get in return, relationships and responses and new ways to think and ability to advocate for healthcare and all these kinds of things that social media platforms provide changes the way that healthcare is perceived, which has always
Mhm.
been our goals. We always wanted to be seen as life-saving and impactful and changes patients' lives. And that's what should be first and foremost in everyone's mind. So listen, let's stay in touch. We'll be talking again. Give my best to Mason
Yeah.
and Quinn and
Yes, we'll
enjoy the
do. Thanks for
holidays.
having me. This was fun.
Yeah, me too. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye.